That night she prayed, her heart heavy with sadness. Dear God, I've never asked you for anything, but please make my disease disappear so that my husband can love me as much as I love him. I don't want to be obese anymore. Please. What Makena didn't know was that her prayer would be answered, and in ways she could never have imagined, beyond her expectations. As weeks turned into months, Makena's life felt emptier than ever. Every day she followed the same routine, trying to care for Olufemi, watching him switch on his charm for the camera and switch it off for her. One afternoon, feeling worn down and alone, she decided to go for a walk. She found herself in a small, quiet park nearby, hoping the fresh air would clear her mind. She sat down on a bench and closed her eyes. Without realizing it, she began to sing softly to herself. Makena had a beautiful voice but had always been too shy to sing in public. Lost in her song, she didn't notice the man sitting on the next bench, listening intently. He was mesmerized by her voice. When she finished, Makena opened her eyes, surprised to see the man smiling warmly at her. "That was beautiful," he said, his voice kind and warm. Makena felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't used to strangers noticing her, much less complimenting her voice. "Oh, thank you," Makena replied, feeling a bit shy. The man introduced himself as Thulani. He had a warm smile and an easygoing manner that instantly put her at ease. They began talking, and Makena found herself opening up in a way she hadn't in a long time. She told him about her love for singing, how it had always been her dream, and how she hadn't sung for anyone in ages. Thulani listened patiently, nodding, genuinely interested in her story. As they spoke, she felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in months, a sense that someone actually saw her as a person, with her own dreams and feelings. Soon, Makena found herself spending more and more time with Thulani, her new friend from the park. Each day with him was like a breath of fresh air, a reminder of who she was before life with Olufemi had dimmed her spirit. Thulani was easy to be around, uncomplicated and genuinely kind. Whenever Olufemi would disappear on one of his work trips, Makena felt a sense of freedom, knowing she could meet up with Thulani without guilt or tension. They'd sit on a park bench reading together, sharing chapters aloud, or laughing over something silly as they enjoyed their favorite ice cream flavors. Thulani was everything Olufemi wasn't: attentive, gentle, and above all, honest. He had a quiet confidence but never felt the need to show off or demand attention. With him, Makena didn't feel the need to impress anyone or pretend. She was simply herself. Some afternoons, Thulani would bring his guitar, playing soft melodies as Makena sang along, her voice gradually finding its strength again. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so carefree. For the first time in a long while, Makena's laughter was real, and her friends and family began to notice the change. Slowly, she was becoming a source of warmth and joy once more, the sunshine they remembered her to be. But no matter how close she and Thulani became, Makena's heart stubbornly clung to her love for Olufemi. She continued holding on to hope, even though deep down, she sensed something was missing. Meanwhile, Olufemi's life was taking a different direction. His social media presence was booming, and he began receiving invitations to high-profile events, mingling with other influencers, and enjoying a life full of admiration and attention. At one of these events, he met Zuri, a social media star known for her beauty and confidence. Zuri was everything Olufemi desired: popular, charming, and glamorous. They began meeting in secret. Olufemi would tell Makena he needed to go on business trips, but he was actually vacationing with Zuri, enjoying the attention and admiration she gave him. Makena was left behind, feeling the sting of loneliness each time he walked out the door without looking back. They still slept in separate bedrooms, and he hardly looked at her anymore, except to make a post or go live briefly for his followers. One evening, Makena's world came crashing down. a follower had spotted Olufemi and Zuri together at a restaurant, their faces close, clearly sharing a kiss. The video, recorded secretly, quickly went viral with hundreds of comments discussing the scandalous relationship. As Makena scrolled through the comments, her heart pounded. She played the video over and over, hoping it wasn't true, but there was no denying what she saw. When Olufemi returned home, Makena confronted him, her voice trembling as she asked about the video. He didn't flinch or offer any apology. Instead, he fought back, looking almost irritated. "Makena, you knew I didn't want this wedding," he said bluntly. "You were just a way to boost my image. I never loved you and you knew that, but you still married me." Makena's hands shook, her eyes filling with tears as the truth shattered her illusions. "Why? Why would you do this to me?" she managed, barely able to breathe. Olufemi replied, unbothered. "It was for my account. You know, for views. Honestly, I'm done with all this. I'm leaving, and by the way, I'm taking Zuri with me." And with that, he walked out, leaving her alone, broken. Makena sat alone that night, crying, her mind replaying Olufemi's words over and over again. The man she had loved for so long, the one she had sacrificed so much for, had never truly cared for her. She wanted to go to her family for comfort, to let them help her pick up the pieces. But she knew the first words out of their mouths would be, "We told you so." The thought stung, and in her shame and heartbreak, she chose to go to the one person who would never judge her, Thulani. When she arrived at his place, he took one look at her sad face and didn't ask a single question. He simply opened his arms, letting her cry into his shoulder as he held her, his quiet strength helping her release the pain. In the days that followed, Thulani was there, his care unwavering and genuine. He didn't record any of his actions. Everything he did was just for her. He'd bring her tea, make her laugh with silly jokes, and sit with her in silence when words failed. As the weeks passed, Thulani continued his quiet acts of kindness. He'd find little ways to cheer her up, taking her on walks, reading to her, or playing her favorite songs on his guitar. His warmth began to fill the empty spaces Olufemi had left behind, and little by little, Makena felt her spirit returning. Her laughter started coming naturally again, her heart slowly finding strength. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset, Thulani handed her a small sealed envelope. "What's this?" she asked. Thulani gave her a gentle smile. "It's something I wrote for you, but only open it when you're truly ready to move on from Olufemi, when you feel whole again. Promise?" Makena nodded, tucking the envelope safely into her closet that night. The days turned into weeks, and with Thulani's support, her heartbreak became bearable, her sadness softened by his gentle encouragement. One morning, Makena received an unexpected call from her doctor. There was an experimental treatment for her condition, a potential breakthrough, but it wouldn't be easy. The treatment would be tough on her body, and she'd need to visit the hospital frequently. Despite her initial hesitation, Makena decided to give it a try. She wanted to be free from the constraints of her condition, to reclaim control of her life fully. True to his nature, Thulani was by her side every step of the way. Each week, he drove her to the hospital, sitting with her through the long hours of treatment. When the pain became overwhelming and she felt drained to the core, Thulani would hold her hand, his presence a source of strength. He'd play his guitar softly, singing her favorite songs to ease her mind, his voice a soothing balm to her pain. Through the worst days of her treatment, when her body felt like it was breaking, Thulani was there. Sometimes she'd cry from the intensity, the exhaustion making her feel weak and worn down. But Thulani never left her side, always ready with a reassuring word or a gentle touch. After a month of treatments, Makena's body began to respond. Her condition improved, and with it, her physical health started to transform. She lost weight, her strength returning little by little. Thulani encouraged her to take small steps, helping her with exercise, guiding her through each workout. They became even closer during this time, and Makena was grateful beyond words, knowing his care had helped her heal from both her physical pain and her broken heart. 6 months passed, and Makena's life blossomed like never before. The experimental treatment had freed her from her illness, and she had lost a significant amount of weight. Her newfound health allowed her to embrace life with a strength and confidence she had never known. With Thulani's encouragement, she had taken on an exciting new project, a cafe that combined her love for food and music, giving local singers a chance to perform and share their talent. The cafe became a haven for creativity, community, and joy, and Makena poured her heart into bringing her vision to life. Thulani was by her side every step of the way, helping her with everything from finding the right space to designing the interior and setting up the stage. He was her biggest cheerleader. When the cafe opened, it quickly became a sensation in the area. People would come to eat and enjoy live music, and Makena felt like she was finally living a life that felt true to who she was, surrounded by love and support. Meanwhile, Olufemi's life had taken a very different turn. His once thriving social media career was beginning to falter. At first, his new girlfriend Zuri had brought him a surge of followers as fans watched their glamorous lives unfold. But after a few weeks, Zuri lost interest. The excitement faded, and she left him without a second thought, moving on to someone new, someone more successful. Without Zuri, Olufemi's social media posts began to lose traction. The comments turned from admiration to complaints, his followers becoming bored without the drama or intrigue he had once provided. "He's boring," one comment read. Another said, "Please cut his internet connection. I'm tired of seeing him." For the first time, Olufemi began to understand the sting of negative comments, the kind of ridicule Makena had endured. Alone in his empty apartment, Olufemi found himself haunted by memories of Makena. He thought about the warmth she had brought to his life, her quiet laughter, her kindness, her love. He remembered how she'd been there for him, even when he barely deserved it, and a painful realization hit him. He had thrown away the only real love he had ever known. Driven by regret, he began searching for her, hoping to apologize and win her back. He tried visiting her parents' house, but they wouldn't even let him in the door, shutting him out with angry words. He knew he deserved. Desperate, he turned to Zinzi, Makena's best friend, pleading with her to tell him where he could find her. Zinzi looked at him with disdain, but eventually gave in, telling him Makena was now running a cafe of her own. The next day, Olufemi arrived at Makena's cafe, nervous but hopeful. He walked in, scanning the room, but it took him a moment to recognize the woman behind the counter. She was radiant, her once familiar face now transformed by health and confidence. Olufemi's heart pounded as he watched her, mesmerized by the woman she had become. Olufemi approached her slowly, and when Makena finally looked up, her smile faded. She greeted him politely, but there was a distance in her eyes, an indifference that told him she had moved on. Olufemi tried to speak, struggling to find the right words. "Makena, I'm so happy to see you again. You've really changed. You look amazing." She didn't reply, her face calm and unreadable. "Are you free?" he continued, trying again. "Maybe we can have some coffee together?" Makena looked at him, her expression unchanging. "I'm busy, Olufemi. I can't continue this conversation." Olufemi felt a flicker of shame but wasn't ready to give up. Day after day, he returned to the cafe, bringing her flowers, sending messages, hoping she might remember the good times they had shared. He made every effort to prove he had changed, to win back even a fraction of her love. Makena found herself increasingly conflicted, unsure of how to handle Olufemi's persistence. Unsure of her own feelings, She confided in Thulani, who listened patiently but couldn't hide a trace of sadness at the mention of Olufemi's return. One evening, he finally spoke up, his tone firmer than she was used to. "Makena, how can you even think of going back to someone who treated you like that? Why are you letting him get in your head again? How will you ever move on from him if this continues?" A week later, Thulani came to help Makena at the cafe. He enjoyed spending time with her and supporting her as she worked to realize her dreams. The cafe was bustling as usual, and Thulani was busy serving customers, carrying a tray of drinks to a table, when the door opened and Olufemi walked in, holding a bouquet of flowers. Thulani's face darkened the moment he saw him. He set the tray down and marched over. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low and sharp. Olufemi looked confused but calm. "I'm here to talk to Makena." Thulani stepped forward, his frustration barely contained. "Talk to her. You don't get to just walk in here after everything you've done. Who do you think you are?" Olufemi tilted his head, his tone unfazed. "Who am I? Who are you?" Thulani's voice rose. "I'm the person who helped her get better when you left her in pieces." Before Olufemi could respond, Makena appeared, her tone calm but firm. "Thulani, I'll handle this myself. Please leave." Thulani turned to her, disbelief etched on his face. "Makena, you can't be serious." "I am," she said quietly. "Go, Thulani, I don't want any drama in the cafe." Thulani clenched his fists, shaking his head in frustration before storming out of the cafe. Makena watched him leave, her heart heavy with guilt, but she turned back to Olufemi and said, "Let's take a walk." The two walked in silence for a moment. The quiet between them was tense, but eventually, Olufemi broke it, his voice soft and full of regret. "Makena, I'm so sorry for everything. I was selfish, blind, and I hurt you in ways I can't even explain. But I've changed, and I want another chance. Please." Makena stopped walking and turned to look at him. "I'll think about it," she said after a long pause. When she got home, she couldn't stop thinking. She picked up her phone and called Thulani, but he didn't answer. She tried again, but still, nothing. Frustrated, she sank into her chair, replaying Thulani's words in her mind. "Why are you letting him get in your head again? How will you ever move on from him if this continues?" She had no answer, but Thulani's words struck her deeply. She realized she had to make a decision. The next day, when Olufemi arrived at the cafe with his usual hopeful smile, she took a deep breath and looked him in the eyes. "Olufemi," she said gently but firmly, "thank you for the flowers and gifts, but I can't go back. I'm grateful for everything we went through because it made me stronger, but that part of my life is over." As she spoke the words, a weight lifted from her heart and she knew she had made the right choice. Olufemi's face fell and he left without another word, defeated. Later that night, Makena rushed to Thulani's house, excited to tell him what had happened and to share the relief she felt. But when he opened the door, his face looked sad. "Makena," he said softly, "I'm glad you're here. I have something to tell you." Her heart sank as he explained that he'd been offered a job in another country, an opportunity he couldn't pass up. His flight was the next day, at 4 p.m. The news hit her like a wave, leaving her with a pain that was both unexpected and overwhelming. She didn't understand why it hurt so much, why the thought of him leaving left her feeling so empty. She went back home and cried all night. When she woke up the next morning, the sadness was still there. Trying to distract herself, Makena began tidying her things, and her eyes fell on the envelope Thulani had given her months ago, back when they were watching the sunset. She remembered his words. "Open it when you're ready to move on." Her hands shook as she opened it and began to read.
Makena, from the first day I met you, I saw something extraordinary. You may not have realized it, but you radiated a warmth that could light up anyone around you. Your heart, so full of kindness and gentleness, amazed me. You gave without expecting anything back, and every day you showed a strength I could only admire. I'll never forget the sound of your laughter, the way it brought so much joy to those around you. Even on days when you didn't feel it yourself, I could sit beside you forever, just watching you read, watching you find beauty in the smallest moments, and it would be enough. When you sang, you brought the world to a standstill. I remember every note, every melody. You are a gift, Makena, a light that shines even when it's been hurt or dimmed. I need you to know that I fell in love with you not for what you look like or any outer change, but for the incredible soul that you carry within you. Your spirit, your courage, and your endless kindness are what I cherish most. You may never feel the same way about me, and that's okay, but I wanted to tell you what you mean to me, to let you know that you are loved more than you realize. Maybe one day you'll be mine, or maybe not. Either way, remember that I love you, Makena. I always will.
The letter ended with Thulani's simple, heartfelt words. Tears began to spill down Makena's cheeks as she felt the weight of his love settle over her. Her mind flooded with memories. Thulani by her side, through every painful treatment, every weak moment, every triumph, all the way to this moment. She remembered that he had given her this letter before her treatment. He had fallen in love with her despite her weight. He saw beyond her appearance. He saw her soul. A realization hit her like a spark. She loved him too. She had loved him all along but had been too hurt, too afraid to admit it. And now he was leaving. Panicked, Makena glanced at the clock. It was already 3 p.m. She had barely an hour to reach the airport. Without a second thought, she threw on her shoes, grabbed her bag, and dashed out of the house. She hailed the first taxi she could find, urging the driver to hurry as they sped toward the airport, her heart racing faster than the car itself. At the airport, she ran through the bustling terminal, scanning the signs for the departure gates. It was nearly 4 p.m., and each step felt like it might be her last chance. Just as she rounded the corner, she spotted Thulani heading toward the passenger gate. His back turned. "Thulani!" she called, her voice barely holding back a sob. He turned around, his face a mix of surprise and hope. Makena ran to him, breathless and trembling. "I love you too, Thulani," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry it took me so long to realize it, but I love you." Without another word, he pulled her close, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both a beginning and an end. As they held each other, Makena's heart overflowed with gratitude. "Thank you, God, for answering my prayers beyond my expectations. Thank you," she thought to herself, her spirit finally at peace.
Hey tale lovers, we hope you enjoyed this story as much as we loved creating it. Don't hesitate to explore more love stories on our channel. Until next time, take care and keep the stories alive.